In this episode, right, we're going to be talking about how you can avoid an uncomfortable future if you actually get to do some little things right now. The things are very little, but most people make it very complex, right? So this is coming from episode 23, which is chapter 23 of this book, The Diary of a CEO. This is where Stephen Bartlett talks about how you should not become an ostrich. So he brought out this point called the ostrich effect. Now, what is the ostrich effect? Now, let us see what happens when an ostrich is faced with danger, with fear, with risk. When an ostrich senses something dangerous, what the ostrich does, right, is to bury its head in the sand. Now, think about it. An ostrich is very big, but it sees it much more safe to bury the head in the sand because it believes that by doing that, it is now invincible to the threat itself. That's one, too. At the same time, he understands that if anything crazy is to happen, he's not going to witness it. Now think about it. That is how most people are living their lives. Now, if you're somebody who's watching this video, there's a high chance that you want to see a change in your life. You want to see something that's different. So how does this work in real life? Some people, they have deep conversations that they know that they need to have. But for some strange reasons, they are avoiding that conversations. It's like when people, it's like them, they just kick the can. That is the real definition of kicking the can down the road. And you see this thing happen in business, in relationship, in life. In business, they could see a company that is overtaking them in terms of innovation, ideas, creativity. Yet they feel very relaxed. They tell themselves lies. And this is even worse when people give themselves comfortable lies, right? So that they don't look like they don't know what they are doing. Very, very bad. In relationship, right? There could be an underlying root cause. Maybe somebody doesn't like the way he's treated, right? And for some strange reasons, whether it's due to social conditioning, does not see the need to open up to voice out. So that person is being hurt inside, back to back. What about that? What about life? Life, health conversations. There are people who you right, or rather you yourself. There are conversations you probably had in your head about either healthy eating or healthy living, but yet you understand the problems around that healthy living, healthy lifestyle, but you choose to probably bury your head in the sand and assume that don't worry before you get to an elderly age you would have stopped some habits. Guess what? Those little habits that you have, right, that you think you would stop later in the future, might have their effects right before you stop, and by then it's become too late. So, what should we really do? The honest truth is that we need to actually sit down and have that honest conversation. Although Stephen Bartlett gives us 4 steps, 4 smart steps that you can adopt if you actually want to, sit down and start to have that honest conversation. One thing you should realize is that distractions from reality is one of our biggest problems right now. There are people who are drinking excessively, people who are taking drugs excessively, not because they really enjoy it, but because they feel like if they can hide themselves from the situation, then it becomes better. If you've ever been to, like literally, if you've been to some parties, if you've been to some maybe a place where people consume alcohol, like a beer parlor or something, one thing you kind of realize, right, is the fact that a lot of these people are not really there for the fun. A lot of them, some of them, a lot of them are there because they're trying to run away from what is happening. Now think about it. Why do people actually sit down and want to numb their senses? I mean, yes, some people who are young and naive, but why would one want to sit down to numb his senses if life is going fine? If you have a purpose, if you have something you're working towards, right, something you are enjoying, why would you want to numb yourself from it? I get that sometimes you want to celebrate, you want to be in that moment, you want to be present, you don't want to care about other things. Maybe it happens once in a while, but there are people who do it every Friday, every 3 or 4 days. Some people who do it 5 times a week. Ask yourself, what is really happening? And I think there's a particular quote that says, a man who doesn't have his purpose will distract himself with cheap pleasure. So people distract themselves even with food. People distract themselves with their phones. And talking about distractions is one of our greatest problems right now. And whether it's a problem to relationship, it's a problem to business, it is a very serious problem. Now, Stephen Bartlett says that now you cannot avoid pain, right? Right? But the pain that comes when you make things worse can be avoided by doing what? Having those honest conversations now. treating the problem to its root cause now. Now, also in your relationship, if you're having the same conversations over and over again, there's a high chance that you have not attacked the root cause. And most people do this, right? When you tell most people to handle their problems, what mostly happens is they handle the problem at a very, very shallow level. So for example, is you don't like the way you're treated by a partner, right? Now instead of you to point out how you want to be treated, they keep talking about how this person is this, is that, trying to frame and blame the person for things. And they begin to bring in other things that are irrelevant, derailing the conversation from the root cause, which is you don't like the way you are treated. Or I literally have a friend who says that his girlfriend almost never says thank you, right? Almost never says thank you for what he has done. Now, instead of him to address that and say, okay, please, like, no, not please, it's like, I feel like if I put in that effort, all that I just need is just you being grateful. Now, just instead of having that conversation, he got into a conversation with her and they started talking about how what someone's entitled, somebody's, you've already lost the conversation there. Even coming into the conversation, trying to have an argument that you can win. It's not a debate here. This is somebody that you are choosing to build something with. Now, it's one thing if this person is cheating, right? And another thing if the person actually, if two of you are working towards a common visual, a common goal. If you're working towards that, there's always going to be problems. And it's funny that all problems come from communication. When communication is skewed, when it's not accurately passed, it creates a problem, a very big problem, which can compound over time. But guess what? To solve it, you still need communication because communication helps you to align communication helps you to align both perspectives, right? And see how you guys can get back on track to having that same vision, that same goal. It's only in a case where the people here, whether it's in business or relationship, have problems, right? That is when if they have problems or they don't align in terms of beliefs and values, then there's really no need having that conversation. A guy, move. So the few steps to dealing with uncomfortable situations that you know are going to lead to problems is first of all, take a pause and acknowledge what is happening. That pause is very, very important because that pause separates people who react from people who respond. When you get to pause in any situation, even though you're going to say rubbish, your rubbish, I'm telling you, it is a psychological trick. Your rubbish will be accepted more than you speaking immediately. And trust me, a pause is very powerful because when I pause, you're going to realize that it's going to allow you to rethink about what I just said and let it sink in. So if you're talking to people and you pause, there's this way that your message is received instead of it just being trashed away. Because why? You paused. So you have to observe that when you get to pause, it's easier for you to zoom out of things and see things objectively only when you pause. Because if you've ever noticed people that you try to advise about maybe a vice that they currently have, whenever you bring it up, they're already feeling very, very insecure. They're already fidgeting and saying no, 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 no. They have a knee-jerk reaction. But if you sit down to think about it, why did he make these statements? What's there? Then that is where real growth begins to happen. The second step here is for you to review yourself. Now, most people, right? Most people, which I tell you, you are not most people, because if you have gotten to this point of this video, you are somebody who takes himself very, very, very seriously. Now, when you review yourself, this reviewing yourself is a gift, and it's a gift to get better at the more you do it. It is you go out of your head and begin to look at things objectively. Ask yourself the real questions like, okay, what did I really, really do to warrant this kind of behavior? That is where real growth begins to happen. So instead of you trying to blame the other person, ask yourself, and this is very powerful because something my bike instructor told me was, his friend or his mentor said something. The mentor said, whenever you're giving me a story, don't tell me what somebody did and what they made you do. Tell me what they did and what you did. So don't see it, if you're saying that this is what they did and this is what they made you do, what you're saying is that the person is controlling you. But when you zoom out and say, okay, this is what the person did and this is what I did in return, it makes it easier to see the thing objectively. The third step here is for you to speak the truth, because sometimes, right, just because we want to win an argument, we end up saying things that are not exactly true. We warp the perception, and this act is mostly a subconscious act, and a lot of people never ever get to understand that it is a subconscious act. But you, my friend, you need to get the point. When you begin to speak the truth, and this is where Jordan Peterson's advice really comes in. When you speak the truth, you begin to trust your own words. Now, if you begin to lie to yourself, what happens? And this is something that is an advice that cuts across all fields. You learn to speak the truth, learn to be blunt. The more you speak the truth, the easier it is for you to actually detect a lie. And this is it is super interesting because when I chose this idea to say the truth in most cases, in all cases that I'm aware of, or I'll say in most cases, not in all cases, is I began to detect lies easily and I began to trust my words more. If I say I will do something, it becomes easier to do it. And same thing, so that's why I say always speak the truth, and it's a very strong advice from Jordan Peterson. Because when you lie and you know that it's a lie, at some point you begin to not trust your words anymore. And if you cannot trust your words anymore, what's there to life? What can you really do if you cannot no longer trust yourself? The last step is to seek the truth. So you have said your perspective, which is what it was, right? What you did. Now seek the truth. Is that really what happened? Speak to the other person or the other people. What's really going on? Have people's opinions, objective opinions. Because the better you get at speaking the truth, the better you get at processing the truth. Because sometimes if you are somebody who lies to yourself, because you lie to people, in the process you don't trust your words. In the process you barely get to trust the words of other people. When people are giving you the truth, it sounds warped. It looks like you're not taking it objectively. This is why the truth is very objective. Now, if you understand this thing right, where when you're seeking the truth, you're not trying to score points. You're trying to look for ways that creates a win-win conversation. That is where true growth comes in. So, the entire point of this book, of this chapter, is for you to realize that there is really no point hiding the truth, hiding the conversations. And I'll tell you that one thing my life has shown me is you can only grow to the extent of the truth that you can handle. If you cannot handle basic common truths like your level of attractiveness, your confidence, where are you going to? The people who get to grow the highest are people who understand the deepest truth of life. Because life itself is not a thing of, it's not really a place of you just coming and waving a wand and everything happens to your favor. No. Sometimes things are going to happen that you don't like. But if you can understand the truth and work with it, the key word is not to work because there's no point working against the truth. And people who are avoiding these conversations are working against the truth. They are working against nature. And you, my friend, it is not worth you being there. So I really hope that this video will make you realize that if you see any problem that you know that has to be addressed now, do your possible best to address it now. Have that uncomfortable conversation. Have that uncomfortable idea. If you're in business and you see your competitor doing something, why ignore them, right? What you can do is try to understand what they are doing. And if it's a case where you may have to innovate, right, then go ahead and innovate. So I want to leave you with this quote that I think I wrote down is avoiding uncomfortable realities and difficult conversations is helpful. In business and in personal relationship, we must recognize what is not right, assess what we can do about it, share your findings, and get to the truth. There's a reason the truth keeps coming up over and over again, however challenging it's going to be. And the second part is, if you want long-term success in business, relationship, and life, you have to get better at accepting a comfortable truth as fast as possible. What did I say? You cannot grow as your level of growth you're going to achieve in this life is directly proportional to the amount of truths that you can handle. Now, when you refuse to accept an uncomfortable truth, you choose to accept an uncomfortable future because they go hand in hand. So, if you reach this point, you're somebody who takes himself very, very seriously. And you're not trying to, you do this not because you're trying to flatter people, but because you see a need to want to grow yourself. There's a life essence flowing in you. So, all I'm saying is that if you like this episode, and it's obvious that you want to take care of yourself, share this video with somebody who either wants to make his life better or is on the process of discovering himself. That selfless act of you sharing this video is what's going to make this channel grow and going to make me realize that somebody else apart from you is enjoying this. And why not? I think at some point we may create a community so we can discuss further on deeper ideas than this. And if you like the ideas in this video, please grab a copy of this book. And if you can't grab a copy of this book, feel free to listen to the podcast because Stephen Bartlett has the same podcast titled The Diary of a CEO, and he brings amazing guests. Trust me, amazing guests onto that show, and it's an episode that is he keeps having banging episodes upon episodes. So thank you very much if you stayed this far. Go ahead, share this video, and grab a copy of the book. Talk to you soon, and bye for now.